Hello.
How you doing, buddy?
Hi, John. It's such an honor to have you do this with me. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Honestly, am I talking to you here in Los Angeles? Are we in the same city?
Yes, sir. Yep. Yep. I'm out in Thousand Oaks.
Very nice. I happen to notice that we have the same alma mater. We're both Bruins, I believe.
Yeah, we got a new football coach, so we'll see how that goes.
And you already know more about them than I do. Well, listen, what I did was, once I knew that I was going to have the pleasure of your time, I went and I asked the community. I told them the general impetus for this meeting, which was your song, "Okay," but didn't mean that it had to be limited to only speaking about that. And I asked if there were any good questions out there that the community wanted to ask as well. So between them and myself, I hope over the next half hour, we can have a nice talk. And I'm recording.
Awesome.
Thank you. So this will all, with your permission, be recorded, and then I'll write up something as well. So
Great.
my first very obvious one is genuinely, correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't see explicitly, but you're not Jewish yourself, right?
I'm not. I'm not.
So my obvious question, you know what's coming. Why? Why are you such a great ally for us when we're in such short supply of people like you?
It makes me really sad that you have to ask that question. It shouldn't be that way. It's deeply depressing that it is that way. Um, and the fact that more non-Jews are not speaking up. To me, this is not a Israel Hamas issue. It's a simple moral issue, good versus evil. I don't if in some alternate universe some other group had raped women at a concert, kidnapped grandmothers, beheaded babies in front of their parents, videotaped it and sent it to the families, um, we'd be condemning them as evil. Um, so it really shouldn't matter. I've said before, you don't have to be Jewish to condemn the atrocities of Hamas. You just have to be human. So it is very, I think, telling, depressing, frustrating that so many have remained silent, and some are Jewish. Look in the arts. So many in the arts, in the music business, Jewish icons are silent. So there's something deeply wrong with our culture, which really gets to the basis of this song, that we're not okay. There's something deeply broken in our culture. And I have a very small sense of what Jewish people deal with every day, since my song kind of became popular and Israel shared it. So I think it's been awakening for a lot of us. And it's as I said, it's deeply depressing, but it's also inspiring to stand up and feel like you're doing the right thing at the right time.
Well, I and we certainly feel that you are. How to just put it bluntly, how does it make you feel knowing that so many people watching this would not be like me, and they would watch you and think, "Wow, he's getting paid by them. They got another one because they control Hollywood and the media. APAC is probably paying him all sorts of horrible things, which we hear, and they're not just from bots; they're from real people a lot of the time. I mean, first of all, I'll ask you very simply, have you had any negative feedback since this came out? Because it's hard for me to imagine that you haven't.
Oh, of course. Especially, when Israel shared it on their social media, you see the vitriol, the death threats, the stuff that folks, that Jewish folks deal with every day. And as I said, I think it's been awakening for so many. And of course, then the crazies come out. And for me, and I've talked to some of my non-Jewish friends about this, we always knew anti-Semitism existed, right? But we figured it was like the terrorist usual suspects, or the nut jobs on the right and the left, but we didn't realize how entrenched it was in all aspects of culture. Certainly, we've seen examples in the media, in, of course, academia, and of course, members of Congress who are literally Hamas spokesmen. And so many institutions have been corrupted with the oppressor versus oppressee, the wokeism, the anti-Semitism, especially our kids. It is deeply depressing, and one reason why I feel it's so critical that everybody pick a side, because the first line of my song is, "It's a time for choosing," and I don't think we can bury our heads any longer. I think there is a silent majority that does understand the moral nature of this, but so many have been so silent so long, we are losing a generation of kids. So I think that's why we have to keep this battle going, and we have to have the arts as part of it. If you don't have the arts as part of the messaging, which so many folks don't understand, you're not getting to the kids. I don't care how big your speech is. I don't care if you're a senator. I don't care if you're the president of the United States. If you don't have the arts as part of this culture war, you're going to lose.
That makes a lot of sense to me. And when you talk about there being a silent majority that you think and hope is there, and I think that's a good word choice. It's sad to see that that silent majority becomes slimmer and slimmer and slimmer majority the younger and younger we get, which is, to your point, why we need to get through to the kids. Which is something that makes me happy to see that there are efforts out there, but the efforts seem to constantly be outnumbered by efforts on the other side. So, to were you given any pushback by your representation, your agents and managers, when you decided you were going to come out and take a side in something that I have to imagine 99.9% of Hollywood, even if they've decided internally what their side is, have probably been discouraged from expressing it?
They have. I'm fortunate. I'm kind of on the back end of my career. I'm not beholden to anybody. Um, I don't have a record company. If you would have asked me 30 years ago, would I've written this song? I don't know if I could say I would have. I've also been through it with a couple other songs. I wrote a song about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which everybody said you can't put that out. And then I wrote a song about Ukraine, which was more universally received.
Which you did
Uh,
with the Ukrainian orchestra in
yeah,
the airport that had been demolished, if I
yeah,
understand. That
yeah.
was incredible what you did.
Well, I was hoping that'd be the last one. I take no pleasure in writing these songs. Um,
I believe you also wrote a song about 9/11 called Tuesday.
I did. Obviously my song Superman was the one that kind of put me on the map and became, one of those songs that kind of recognized the heroes of 9/11. Played it at the concert for New York. And Tuesday was kind of about not forgetting the lessons of 9/11. And we have. Certainly Israel has. The fact that this attack could take place, there'll be a time and a reckoning for that. I just watched here. Give me a second. I'm going to plug my computer and I'm going to lose you. Hold on.
Go for it.
There you go. I just watched a screening of actually here in LA of a documentary about the Nova concert. And you just sit there thinking, where is everybody? For hours, these kids were being hunted and tracked down. So I mean, there's a lot of questions to answer. And I do think the kind of culture, the woke culture, the oppressor culture has really kind of infected everybody's mentality, and you forget there's evil people out there wanting to do evil things. So I think in America we've forgotten that. I think Israel to a certain extent forgot that. They let their guard down and they paid a horrible price. So I do think a lot of people are reevaluating their worldview, especially those who I think more on the left who've been trying to I think I wouldn't say enable, some of the actions of Hamas, but certainly have not, I think, understood what they were really dealing with.
Which is ironic since they literally had GoPros and told the world what they were doing. And it's on their Wikipedia page what their actual charter is and what from the river to the sea means, but yet people, as you and I both know, continue to say, what you're telling me you mean, you don't actually mean. And Hamas must be laughing about it because they're saying, okay, thank you for telling us what we actually mean. Doesn't mean what we mean.
Yeah, I mean, look, the world's gone mad. The world's gone mad. And if it was just Hamas, I think we'd be in a better place. But it's not Hamas. It's the UN. The UN has still not condemned Hamas. This whole thing with the UN RWA.
Yeah,
You,
UNRWA.
we,
Yeah.
we've known, and even on our college campuses, we've known for decades that the elite, supposed elite college campuses have been overrun with radicalism, anti-Semitism, funding billions of dollars from Qatar. So I think none of this stuff should be surprising, but I think what I come back to is, I remember after I played Superman at the concert for New York, after 9/11, you'd walk down 7th Avenue and you would see the posters of people missing, and you knew they were not coming back. It would break your heart. But could you ever imagine people walking down the street and ripping those posters down? That's what we're seeing now in all aspects of our culture. And and I do think it's something that if we don't stand up and address and recognize, it's going to take decades to turn around this culture of death, and also to recognize the Palestinian heroes who are asking for change. The hero of my video is a Palestinian woman calling for Hamas to stop taking the humanitarian aid. I had a lot of options to put over the lyric, "We need every good woman, every good man." I put a Palestinian woman there. So this song is not anti-Palestinian. Frankly, it's pro-Palestinian for the long term. If you truly care about Palestinian lives, this is a pro-Palestinian video because it's an anti-evil video, anti-Hamas video. I was just reading an article about the son of Hamas, one of the leaders, who's been very vocal
Yes.
about calling out the death culture. So for me, it's not just supporting Israel. It's supporting everybody who's fighting these intertwined evil forces. Look, Putin's in my video,
Hmm.
Khomeini's in my video, and frankly, the General Secretary of the UN is in my video as an evil actor. Because if you enable this, you bury your head, you are part of the problem. So again, I think the song's saying pretty much what we all knew, but the fact that no one else is saying it in the arts is certainly a shameful time in our history. But I'm working on some things to hopefully change that. And there are a few folks, Ozzy Osbourne came out the other night and was shouting down Kanye, right?
Yes.
That's good. Every voice makes us stronger. And I've seen that happen before, and I've seen how music can move the needle in culture. And so hopefully we can continue to grow this momentum with the song and some other things we're talking about doing.
Is anybody that you can discuss, has anybody offered to collaborate with you, or have you reached out to anybody to collaborate with you on performing this in concerts or at events or anything like that that's willing to take the plunge? And separately, I was asked actually by by somebody out of Israel, asked a question, and she wanted to know if you would be willing to, I don't know if you're aware, they're planning on doing a Nova Festival, bringing it back as probably this June in Tel Aviv,
Hmm.
specifically to raise money for people who are still rehabilitating and also for good information out there, all good causes. She was wondering whether or not you would be open to performing at it. You would certainly be the headliner at something like this, I would imagine.
Well, that's very, it's very humbling. I have been asked to perform at various synagogues in town, some of the big ones, which I will be doing. Um, we're actually talking about doing some collaborative things. We'll see where that goes. It looks like I probably will be going to Israel sooner than later, maybe even in a month or so, to do some things there and meet with some folks and maybe do a performance or two. But
Would that be your
yeah,
first time in
what's
Israel?
what's that?
Would that be your first time visiting Israel?
It would be my first time.
Oh,
It's heartbreaking. I have to visit for the first time under these circumstances. But I'm certainly open to playing the festival. I'll do it. I mean, I'll just tell you right now, I'd be honored to do it. If the organizers, if you can have them connect with me, I'll certainly, circle those dates and come and bring a few pals with me, and certainly we'll sing, we'll mourn, and we'll do what we can to help the victims and their families.
I assure you this will get to the right people for that. That would be wonderful. I appreciate that.
Sure.
And this just wait for all of the Jewish mothers to start to try to set you up with their tour guides and their home cooked meals, and everybody's going to want to
But
show you
it's
around.
already happened. I got thousands. It's really it's again it's so tragic that we have to meet under these circumstances. But I do feel I've gotten a certain sense of the Jewish community, and everybody's so warm and appreciative, and um and again I feel as Elon Musk said, kind of an honorary Jew, and and I'm proud of that.
We've talked about kids, and that's the generation it has to go to. Am I correct that you have two children of your own?
I do.
I'm not expecting you to get too much into their business, but
Yeah.
what around what age group are they, and what sort of capacity of understanding do they have of what you've been doing? Well, where are they with all of this?
Yeah, they're both in their early 20s. My daughter actually just graduated from one of the schools that's the worst,
Mm.
NYU.
Yeah,
She had a wonderful time. And like me, she's disturbed what she sees there. Um, she didn't see a lot of that personally in her experience there. People of all ethnicities were really loving and great to each other, but I think she's very disturbed what she's seen at her alma mater. And both of them are like proud of me. They're like, "Good job, Dad." I'm still dad, and of course, when you do stuff like this, people worry. There's crazy people out there, and so they worry about you. But I think they feel that I'm trying to do the right thing, and I'm passionate about it, and they're proud of that, and they're worried, and I think both of those sentiments are legitimate.
they're not getting any negative pushback personally by their age group because of their dad.
Not many people know. Not many people connect the dots. The people that do know are supportive of it. I'm sure it will happen. I'm sure if this thing continues to grow, it will happen. But as we talk about, it's like whatever you know stones and arrows come our way, it's so trivial compared to what the hostages are facing, or the Ukrainians are facing, or the Afghan girls still trapped in Pakistan. Or every day I talk to people about these things going on in the world, and whatever problems I have or whatever comes my way, it's like every one of those people would love to have my problems. And so I think we remind ourselves of that, and kind of just keep our heads down, and focus on what we can do to make a difference.
Absolutely. I, if you don't mind, I'm gonna glance because I've been asking mostly my own questions, but I do want to get to some of the ones people have asked me.
Yeah.
Now, have you had from people in your community, and when I say community, I mean other musicians or artists, have you lost any friends over this? Have you gained new friends over this? What's been your feedback from people who are your peers?
Not so much. I mean, I've kind of always been kind of, on an island, on my own island. There are a lot of folks that didn't like my Afghanistan song because it was critical of the administration. There's a lot of folks that now don't like my Ukraine song because many on the right are not so supportive of Ukraine like they used to be. But I kind of get used to the back and forth, of depending on the content. They love you, then they hate you. They hate you, then they love you. And I think there's certainly a group of folks I know in Hollywood that are very supportive of what I'm doing. Patricia Heaton has been fantastic on Twitter. I actually met with her in Nashville. We're doing some stuff together. Gary Sinise, I'm an ambassador of the Gary Sinise Foundation.
Hmm.
I think all these folks who kind of have a moral spine, and appreciate our troops, and have a certain value system really appreciate it. So I take heart from that. Um, but again, I think if you do anything of consequence, there'll be people that love you and hate you, and it's when they don't care, or when they're apathetic, then you're probably not moving the needle. So it just comes with the territory. But yeah, I don't get invited to the parties, right? So I don't care. I don't care. There's been a few rock stars that are on the left, and very kind of pro ceasefire, that have not enjoyed my song, but that's you know
You mean
that's
you're not having Shabbat dinner with Roger Waters this week?
well, he's always been on my but there's people I've actually worked with before, and they're good
Right.
people. And I just think they're wrong, and I think they've been corrupted by this mindset. And there's the Mark Ruffalos of the world out there, who are doing that stuff, and they have the right to say it, and have the right to present my argument. And that's and I think we just need more who
Yeah,
believe what I believe, more comfortable to say it out loud, and not just in a room where they'll tell it to my face, but they won't put it on social media.
right. We just need to get you as many followers as Mark Ruffalo has so we can counter it.
Well, or we just I just need to, we need to enlist many folks, as I said, who in the room will tell you this is horrible, Hamas is
Yeah,
evil, but for whatever reason feel uncomfortable sharing that online. And this is not, again, it's not a political thing. I mean, look, Deborah Messing shared my video and Mark Levin, okay? You can't get further apart on the
yes,
political spectrum than those two. And, senators shared my video and Fetterman's office reached out to me and said they love my video. So it's not a political thing. And we live in this age where everything's so divisive. If we can't come together and say, look, we can talk about the history of Israel, Gaza, Palestine. We can talk about that. But if we first can't condemn Hamas for these atrocities, then nothing is evil
right.
and nothing is nothing. No argument. There's nothing to talk about. So I think that's where I'm trying to start. And but it's a long battle. It's gonna. You have to change a generation of kids' minds. You have to do do everything you can to turn this culture of death in many of these Arab communities, that when you brainwash a kid at 5 years old that your goal in life is to kill Jews, you know, it's going to be a long battle to turn that tide. But we have to. We have no choice. We
Yeah.
have no choice.
To what you're saying, I remember in 2006, I guess it was, when Hamas came in power and was elected, however legitimate their elections could have been. And I remember thinking, at least now nobody will be able to dispute from the starting ground. It'll be Hamas. They're a known terrorist organization by the entire European Union and America. I said out loud to friends, you know what? It's not a bad thing that they're in power, because for once, people won't be saying to Jews that you have a legitimate partner. So we'll know that when there's a terrorist attack, it's being done by terrorists. And how wrong was I? That people just rewrite history now. And now you have children reading poems and manifestos by bin Laden and seeing the good in them. And it's just amazing. I couldn't have been more wrong. I stand very corrected to this day.
No, I think we're all, 20% of the kids don't believe the Holocaust happened, over 50% side with Hamas. Yeah, we've lost our kids. And a lot of that is the indoctrination of academia. And, we've kind of turned a blind eye to it. And this kind of, acceptance of this oppressor dogma. And yeah, we failed. We failed ourselves and we failed our kids. But here we are. If there's any, and I'm not gonna use the words positive, but there's anything that was clarifying about October 7th is you see people's true colors now. You
That's
see people's
handsome.
true colors. And that's good. That's good to know. That's good to know who's on what side, what their views are. So now there's no gray area. Now there's no like moral relativity.
Yeah.
We know what networks have basically been promoting Hamas propaganda. We know what artists are basically propagating, terrorist, excusing atrocities. Uh, you know, I saw Cori Bush, or one of the Hamas squad, is down 22 points in her reelection, which is great.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm hoping that out of this tragedy, we see some actual action and some decision making by not just the population, but the Jewish voters who so often have been voting in many of these very radical leftist candidates, um, who have been part of this decline of the culture. So we'll see. It'll be very interesting the next election to see what the Jewish voters do and whether this sustains for a decade and there's a dynamic shift, or it's a moment in time and people kind of regress to their tribes.
Do you see a realistic way out for us as a people, as a country, not to mention Israel, but stepping aside from Israel and the war, that for us as humanity, how do you actually think it's realistic that our next generations are going to come back from this?
It's a very good question. Um, It's a very good question. I think certainly with the status quo, if we kind of just been shrug our shoulders like we have been, the answer is no. But I also am seeing a certain tide change, um, especially with some of the some of the reporting on the UN RWA, and you're seeing everybody exposed for who they are. You can't cover it up. Um, Now, of course, to many on the left and the pro-Palestinian movement, you know, it's like a cult. It's like a faith. It's like nothing's going to change your mind. But I think there's enough to try to start tipping it back. But you first have to start addressing academia. You know, don't send your kids to Harvard. Send them to Alabama. You know, whatever it is. I think everybody in their own families, in their own communities, has to take up kind of arms, and it's not military arms, it's cultural arms. It's talking to your kids' friends, not being intimidated. Understand you're going to be called names. And I think it's critical for the non-Jewish churches, artists, businesses, politicians, rally around the Jewish people in Israel. Because certainly, I mean, people forget, you know, there's 15, 16 million Jews. I probably heard from a quarter of them. And it's people forget, you know, this David versus Goliath. So it's really up to the rest of us to do the right thing. And we'll see. I do see some signs that things are starting to turn. But we got a long way to go.
Yeah, that's an understatement, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, your beautiful song, 100 Years, which I have to say, probably about 50% of the time I hear it makes me tear up. Um, is it mean something different to you now that you're older and wiser than when you actually wrote it? Like when you perform the song today, are you thinking different things? Is there a different emphasis than when you were first writing it?
Of course, you know, especially that song because you're always somewhere in it. You know, when I wrote the song, I was in the second verse. Now I'm in the bridge, and one day I'll be in the vamp, and one day I'll hit my last note, and that'll be it. So yeah, I mean, certainly every time you sing it, you know, and you think about where you were when you wrote it, and the uh, the midlife crisis verse, you got through that, and now being in the bridge, and it in a way it never gets old. You know, there's some songs you write that you play a lot and you're like, okay, I'm going to play it and it's part of my job, but you know, you're not excited about it every night. But 100 Years always feels kind of fresh for that reason. And I think that might be one way why it's still, you know, the song's, geez, it's going to be almost 20 years old next year. And but it still kind of resonates in the culture because we're all in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's definitely I feel like it's up there in my mind in the pantheon of things like, Cats in the Cradle and other songs, which
Um,
are just beautiful songs that take you through a whole life with, hindsight and so on. It's really a gorgeous song, if I might say so. Um, I was asked by somebody, since you have written about 9/11 and Ukraine and Afghanistan and now, anti-Semitism and so on, uh, what's your process like when it comes to writing specifically something that's coming from a very tough emotional state?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it depends. You know, the Afghanistan song was just pure anger. I had friends going down to rescue folks we abandoned, and I was just so angry at what our government did and then labeled it an extraordinary success. It, you know, I'm one who supports our troops a lot. I do a lot with the USO, Gary Sinise Foundation. And when our military leaders literally lie to our face, that really scared me, which General Milley and Austin did. So that one was like a visceral scream. The Ukraine one was similar in the fact that it came very quickly. When the war started, nobody had heard of Zelensky, and our first act was to offer him a plane ticket to leave, and he said no. You know, I'm going to stay here, probably die with my wife and three little girls, and but send me some Stinger missiles. And I hadn't seen that kind of courage in a generation. The West has been so feckless and weak and appeasing. And I wrote that really fast and I put it out piano vocal because, you know, at that time the mercenaries were hunting him and we thought he'd be dead in a week. So that one came very quickly. And then, of course, we kind of rearranged it, did the version with the orchestra, which was a long process, going to Ukraine, which again was a surreal process. And this one too, I think it came over time. Certainly the atrocities on October 7th just reminded us of 9/11 and maybe the Afghan withdrawal, but then the aftermath, seeing the rallies right away celebrating the atrocities and of course, the video and the song starts with Eric Adams' speech of, saying, look, something's really wrong. We're not all right. So certainly that theme got the idea in my head. But then over the next few months, watching, the colleges, uh, members of Congress, the media, just basically collapse morally, really got me thinking. And Bari Weiss made a really, I think, important speech, talking about how, Israel, Hamas, anti-Semitism is really just the tip of the spear. There's a much deeper problem. And when you have this moral collapse of the world and the culture, anti-Semitism rears its head first, but then they're eventually coming for you. So that also, I think, resonated with me. And when I started to write it, I didn't just sit down and write it like the other ones. I listened to some Jewish music. I listened to some funeral marches, some classical marches, because I knew the tone was going to be very important. So it took me a minute to kind of figure out, you know, what is this going to be musically? The lyrics came very quickly. They kind of wrote themselves once I had the theme.
Yeah,
But it took a
you
little,
even wrote about Zelensky being the, part of a Holocaust survivor's family, right?
yeah,
So it was, I
yeah.
mean, it was not hidden. We knew who you were talking about, and it was amazing.
Yeah, and so this one was they're all different. This one I took a little more care with this one because I wanted to make sure the musical tone, it had to have weight, it had to be sad, it had to be painful, but it's interesting just musically. So initially I wrote it piano vocal and I sang in it, and it was working well. I thought it was sending some folks, but then I thought it really needed the personal touch, and certainly much of the Jewish music, especially from the past, has a string. Usually, it's a violin, a string instrument. Kind of being the human. Fiddler on the Roof, right?
Hmm.
So I thought I really need that component to add the visceral pain and the human context. So I called up my cello playing wizard, and once he added that to the song, I knew that I think we hit on the right tone. So that was critical, I think, to the experience of the song, having that just drilling cello. Um, and he's a guy who plays beautiful, and took a while to get him to play not beautiful, which this song needed. So musically, that was kind of the journey of kind of from when the idea first came to my head to kind of finishing the song. And then of course the video took months to do. I mean, I knew in my head putting out the song's not going to do anything. I gotta tell the story. I gotta show what's happening, and it's not my opinion. Here's clips. Here's what happened. So the video took a couple months to do.
I was going to ask how did you choose what was on there? Was that all you? Were you just going around looking for images?
For the most part, I kind of had I knew I got lucky actually. I initially we were going to put out a little earlier, but this was before the three presidents testified to Congress. So as soon as they did that, I'm like, oh, thank you, that's done. Um, and then of course I wanted to kind of start with the Nova concert. I knew I had to have Talib in there. Um, I knew wanted to have the connection of Hamas, to Putin, Khomeini, the UN. Um, but at the very end, actually, it was the very end where I added the young children being trained as terrorists, because I think it was important to have that, because that is where this comes from, and that is what has to be addressed. So I didn't pick every slide. I picked most of them. The one I didn't pick, which I think was probably the most moving, is the picture towards the end of the concert with the pictures of the hostages.
Mhm.
That just that just made me cry when I saw it. And I intentionally wanted to have the last slide be a call to action. And I think Martin Luther King's statement of silence in the face of evil is complicity, that was very important to me to have. Here's not just a documentary of some sad things that happened and terrible things. It's like you cannot bury your head anymore. So I think for me it was really important to have that last message, basically saying, it's time for choosing, like the first line.
I thought of your song where did you see the Super Bowl commercial that was being talked about? That was
Yeah,
done by Robert Kraft. So that was
yeah,
Dr. Clarence Jones, if I'm getting the name right.
yeah,
He was MLK's speechwriter. So I thought of you, how both of you were channeling MLK that way, and it's that's a beautiful comparison in any case. I know that we have to finish up for your time's sake and for this sake, but I would like to make sure that people know people like you need to be spotlit and followed. I'm a big believer in that. I think we need to have more people on our news feeds that are good to watch. So can you tell people where to follow you on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and so on?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, Facebook, it's Five for Fighting Music. I'm sorry, Instagram, it's Five for Fighting Music. And we really need some help there because on Twitter, it's gone viral, millions of views, but Instagram is where the kids see it. So Instagram, Five for Fighting Music, Twitter, John Ondrasik, JOHNONDRASIK, Facebook, Five for Fighting, um, YouTube, Five for Fighting. And I actually went back on TikTok. I'm not a fan of TikTok, but I think you have to fight the war where the war's being fought. So I'm on TikTok too, Fight for Fighting, John Ondrasik, and I uploaded the video to TikTok because I think we have to fight the battle where the kids are, and the content, the anti-Semitism on TikTok is 10 to 1. So I think as much as many of us disdain TikTok and what it is and who finances it, I think we have to go where the kids are. So those are the social media spots, and I appreciate you and everybody sharing the video. As I said, I look forward to going to Israel hopefully next month, and we have some projects to continue to grow this. But the more people that hear the song and share the song, just gives us a little more political capital to do bigger things.
Well, I really hope that you make it to Israel and have a wonderful trip. I appreciate it very much. And please do take lots of pictures and videos and write music. And I will be sure in my column to share everything that you do as I can. I really appreciate you being an ally to us, something we don't have enough of.
Honored to do it. Thank you, Boaz. Reach out anytime.
My pleasure.
I'm here, and
Yeah,
to your family and everybody listening.
absolutely. Thank you
All right,
very
man.
much. Have a great
Take
day.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.